Hello, my friend.
Hey, how are you, man?
I want to introduce David Dobkin. David is an American director, producer, screenwriter. He's best known for directing films such as Clay Pigeons, Shanghai Nights, Wedding Crashers, The Judge, and Eurovision Song Contest, The Story of Fire Saga. David has produced music videos, worked with such talent as Tupac Shakur, Elton John, Blues Traveler, Sonic Youth, Maroon 5, so many others. David has a production company of which he is a principal. He has also produced such movies as Fred Claus with Paul Giamatti and Vince Vaughn, The Change Up with Ryan Reynolds and Jason Bateman. He co-wrote and was an executive producer of the film adaptation of Dark Horse Comics R.I.P.D. He directed, of course, Eurovision Song Contest with Will Ferrell and Rachel McAdams. Welcome to our amazing event here, David Dobkin. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, man. It's been very cool watching everybody and peeking in on all this.
This is a really great event. We are so truth time. David and I have known each other for a very long time, and so I'm just so happy. We've never done anything like this. So I'm so happy that you are peeking into my world a little bit. I've peeked into your world a little bit. So and thank you for getting up so early.
Sure.
So David comes to us from California. So let's dive right into it here. I know time is limited. So let's talk. We're here talking about innovation. We're talking about teams. We're talking about the sort of creativity and critical thinking, these mixes. So what's your process, I guess, just to jump right in,
I mean, my process is always trying to find a good story. That's usually or a good project, and I start with that. The innovation back when I was a young man, I went to film school because that was the only way to get your hands on a camera. There were video cameras, but they were clunky and big, and they were hard. And movies for cinema were not shot on those cameras. So nowadays, you don't really need to do anything. All you need is this and your computer and some editing software, maybe some sound mixing software, and you really are free to create. So the idea of like who the teams are, how you put together teams and how you put together projects has changed enormously. And I have to say that the distribution of the product has changed in the last year in ways that nobody could have imagined. The things that we thought were going to happen in 10 years have happened right now.
Yeah. So due to COVID,
Due
yeah.
to COVID, due to distribution, because people can't go to theaters. I signed up to go make movies. The experience that I signed up for, the thing that I thought I was a part of, has changed enormously. And for viewers, some people, it seems like it's not a big deal because you would rather watch at home streaming. And for other people, it's a really big deal because the cinematic experience has become relegated only to large movies that come out of, mostly superhero films or movies that are very visual effects driven.
How does that translate into sort of the process of making a movie? If you're thinking about a theater versus a living room couch.
It changes a lot. For me, I'm mostly known for comedy work. And for me, the experience I'm sad that there is not comedy in the theater, not necessarily before COVID, this was already changing. It was very hard to get people to come out to a comedy. I think it's been 5 or 6, 7 years before people have been really showing up for movies like, I don't know, The Hangover or whatever it was, but you end up with movies like Jumanji that draw crowds and kids and stuff like that, and they're big and they're visual effects driven, and those movies cost a lot, so they need to go to theaters. At the same time, on the smaller screen, movies like Game of Thrones, TV shows like Game of Thrones have drawn the production values that you would see in large Hollywood movies to the smaller screen. So all of it's been very interesting. I don't know if I don't think I've yet adjusted to looking at projects differently. I went out with a movie a few years ago that was really interesting, and one of the big Hollywood studios says, yeah, we want to buy it, but we want to make it a TV show, which I said no to, which was a huge mistake. Going to be going back out with that again this year as a TV show. But it took me, it took me 2 years to write that script, and I'm not a fast writer, and that's kind of been a big change for me, is trying to adjust into that space.
Yeah.
The
So,
storytelling is different. Your chance to tell a story over 10 episodes with a character that changes and adjusts who they are or transforms and grows is an incredibly different creative skill set than it is to tell the story of a character who arcs over 2 hours and goes through an experience and changes. It's a different set of tools. And look, when I first got to Hollywood, I wanted to make feature films, but I ended up getting into music videos first and later commercials for Ridley Scott. And the thing that was so interesting to me is when I got into commercials is I had to learn how to tell a story in 30 seconds.
yeah.
And at first I found it impossible. It was so frustrating. It was like every big crane shot I had took like the whole time. So slowly I adjusted and I learned how to tell a joke in 30 seconds or I was in comedy then as well. And it was like setup, twist, punchline. And those rhythms and how to tell a story and what people need to know in order to understand that and sell a product was incredibly useful for me down the line. And I'm finding that skill set, which was so frustrating way back when, has become very, very helpful as I move more into television and shorter form filmmaking than features.
How do so you come on the scene, you're the director, you have big name stars on the one side, you've got, the gaffs, the carpenters on the other side, you've got the IT guys behind. How do you corral this? What's your role? How do you sort of move that herd?
It's interesting. Movies come in two different ways to me, or projects. Either I generate them, in which I'm creating the IP and I'm developing and then trying to sell them, or I'm being called to, hey, we want you to read the script and come on board. That was something like Eurovision just was for me. And in a situation like that, you have to adapt yourself to the fact to bring a vision to what they're doing with that movie, and you have to feel like it's your own as well. Now, as far as how you corral it, I have a lot of people that really help me corral it. I end up with 125 to 200 people on set every day when I'm shooting. I go from this very small part of developing something with me and a writer, and maybe we bring an actor on who we're interested in and he's interested enough, but you need to develop the material or the character for that person, which happened in Eurovision for Rachel McAdams' character. We wanted her to come on board. Her character was underdeveloped, and we went through a writing process to convince her to join the movie. And then you go off and you are with a small group of your creatives, your production designer, your cinematographer, and those people, and you scout and you find your locations. In this case, it was Iceland and Edinburgh and London. And then the production kicks up, and before you know it, in 8 to 12 weeks, you have hundreds and hundreds of people working underneath you. And you are relying on those team leaders of each department, costumes, sets, lighting. Those people you are communicating your vision to them, and then they're communicating it down to the people below them. And their abilities to be product managers is a huge part of hiring people, because sometimes people are wildly creative and they cannot run their business. And some people are great at doing both, and you hope that you find those kinds of people.
Yeah.
I've worked with both. But then, the interesting thing is once you've shot the movie, you end up in a room with yourself and an editor, and suddenly it's just you and one person for the next 10 to 20 weeks, and their assistants who are doing stuff for you, but you're really in the room with one person now, rewriting the movie again, using what you have and trying to create I'm trying to create a creative story that has an emotional experience, that has a comedic entertainment experience, whether it's comedy, whether it's being scared, whether it's being emotionally moved, whether it's being thrilled on the edge of your seat. That is what people are coming to be entertained by. And as much as I'm trying to deliver entertainment, I'm also trying to make a really good movie, which means that it emotionally connects to people and people get to take a journey, and hopefully there's a bit of a lesson or a story that's told during the film.
Yeah. Yeah. And so in working, kind of in working across these different teams, if you will, there's always this element of creativity, right? I mean, it must be, you've got this sort of creative vision, and they need to understand what that is, right?
You're constantly communicating that. You're constantly looking at color boards or looking at clothing or referencing other things that you can hope, because you're trying to create, the thing that's very challenging about filmmaking is you are creating the product all the way. It's not the same as making commercials for GM. Their cars are going to sell even if I kind of screw up the commercial, honestly. As long as the car looks good, the commercial's probably going to be okay. They're still going to sell the car. Movies are a product that you're creating. You got to design how the whole thing works. There's no formula to it. People want there to be a formula. People chase what was popular 6 months ago or right now. They always want the thing that's hot. But like in a situation like Wedding Crashers, which is my most successful film at the box office, it was a fight. Nobody wanted to make an R-rated movie but me. I had to fight with my actors about it. I fought with the studio about it. When the movie was tested in front of an audience, it tested through the roof. They were convinced they'd make more money if it was PG-13. But this was an original product. It was a piece of, art and commerce have a very ugly relationship. And but there's creativity always behind every decision. And ultimately, the decision to let it remain an R-rated movie is probably what made it so unique. I was listening earlier to Susan talking about disruptive ideas, and I love it because I love being a disruptor. That's where I found my niche. That was after that movie, I realized my love of Richard Pryor and Lenny Bruce had finally found its place in my career, as opposed to just doing kids movies, which I didn't even have kids at that point. A good example is Fred Claus, which was a movie that didn't work really big at the box office, has since become very well embraced. But at the time, I didn't have children, and I was making what I thought was a PG-13 movie. They brought me in to make a PG-13, Bad Santa type movie, which is an R-rated movie. And then they decided, because the budget got too big, it had to be PG. And I was suddenly out of my grounding of understanding how that kind of comedy works. And it's a very different product. You're into, slipping on banana peels. You're into Abbott and Costello, which I love. But my fastball is irreverence. So it became very complicated to manage that film. And that film pretty much got out of control in its production because of the fact that the requirements were of the story. They think of a movie like Bad Santa, or they think of a movie like Elf, and they're like, oh yeah, $50 million movie budgeted, kind of a thing. Well, I kept explaining to them, but those movies are about people in a real world. Like, this movie has Santa Claus's brother going to the North Pole. We have to build the North Pole. Or are people going to sit through a really cheap looking version of that for 2 hours? Right. So all of a sudden the budget's 80 million, 90 million. Now you're shooting past your profit margin. And now plus you got to put the 30 to 50 million of advertising on top. And then you got to double that in order before you start to see your money back, because exhibitors get 90% of the opening weekend. You have to stay in theaters for a long time. Then they make the decision to pull the movie back to November 4th as a release date, because there's not a long enough run up until Christmas to earn back the money. So you're 4 days after Halloween, you haven't even gotten to Thanksgiving. Nobody's brains have turned to sugar plums yet. No one's thinking about Christmas, and you're fighting yourself. So that's a perfect example of, what I would call the mismanagement of product to delivery.
Yeah, it's interesting. it's like you think of from somebody who's not in the business, you think, okay, a director is kind of controlling a lot of that stuff. But really, it sounds like you're doing a lot of negotiating. You are really advocating for something, but there's other people who have
Well,
real
that
say.
machine, yeah, that machine at the studio takes over your movie. They want you to make the movie, and they really want you then to leave them alone.
Yeah.
What you will mostly see is them doing things that look like other movies. Wedding Crashers was a perfect, going back to that. The first time I saw their marketing campaign, it looked like, for lack of a better word, it looked like a romantic comedy. They were marketing, they were afraid to show how racy and funny the movie was in its true form. And they were convinced that you could not sell sex to women. The head of the marketing department, when so I cut a teaser trailer myself with my editor in my editing room, and I presented it to the head of the studio in front of the head of marketing, which he was not happy about. And the head of the studio goes, "Oh, I love that." And he goes, "Well, you can't do that. You can't just party, 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 party." And then he sleeps with the girl and she says, "I think I love you." And he says, "What?"
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Right.
So we went up against them. They tested their materials against our materials. And our materials tested 10 points higher with women than it did even with men.
Wow.
And I was just like, because you're not looking at the marketplace. Like, the truth is, you're coming from what you know and not trying to innovate or do something and speak to people in a different way. And I think part of the hidden secret of that movie was the fact that 2/3 of our audience, up to $300 million in box office, was women. And
No way.
1/3 of that was women over 50.
Wow.
They
That's
kept coming
amazing.
and coming and coming to the movie. And
Huh.
it just was a very different kind of a thing. So
Has
I
that
just
model
love,
been replicated? I'm thinking of other movies.
what's that?
Has that model been replicated in
In a different way, The Hangover was a replication of that model, but it wasn't some that actually flipped itself and sold more aggressively towards men than women.
Yeah.
It's a darker movie. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's a script that came to me and I passed on.
Did you really?
Yeah, the script came to me first. At that time, I saw everything that was, going to be R-rated.
Right.
And I looked at it and I thought it was too dark. And a friend of mine, Todd Phillips, picked it up and knew what to do with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
So where do you see kind of we have COVID, we've got this great transition, migration to Netflix, to Amazon Prime. Where do you see that going from your perspective, as a working director, as somebody in the arts?
Well, for me, I just think it's going to continue down this road that it has been doing. I think we've accelerated. Look, I don't know, what nobody knows is whether people are going to pay $9.99 for 5 services, right? You got to pay it for Netflix, you got to pay it for Amazon, you got to pay it for Apple, you got to pay. So now everybody's saying, like, you have to buy our content. The interesting thing is this, and the mechanics or the financials of it work very differently now. By the way, it's become very difficult for people who made a lot of living off of residuals, because those are gone in television and they're gone if you lose theatrical release, then you don't have a chance to earn off that box office. You're given a lump sum from Netflix or Amazon or anyone. They want you to sell off your rights to any kind of residuals. So, like anything else, the financials have gotten smaller. It's become more competitive. It's become harder. The thing that's really interesting to me is the average American in North America, and I think that includes Canada as well, in North American, would go to the movies twice a year. So they're spending, let's just say, $10 a ticket twice a year. Netflix comes around and says, we're going to give you all these movies that you can, and you only have to pay $10 a month. So that really worked, because all of a sudden what they found is they were selling a ticket. They were selling 12 tickets a year as opposed to 2. So now they've got the budgets and the subscription to start competing with content. And ultimately, content is king. If people want to see something, and it doesn't matter if it's expensive or cheap or whatever, they want to see it. And the truth is, they will actually almost pay the same amount no matter what, if they want to see it. So their model changed dramatically. The model of viewership changed. The way that people digest content changed. And then what they did a month ago, which was shocked the entire industry and was really interesting, they sunk billions of dollars into content over the last year, and everybody was wondering what was going to happen and why and how they were going to do it. And then all of a sudden they come out and they say a new movie every Friday night the whole year. And these are Hollywood-sized movies. And all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I get Friday night becomes, everybody wants to see what's going to come out that weekend. You are back to having the theatrical experience. They could have dropped it on Tuesdays the way you drop albums, but they took over the old model of theatrical appetite. What are we going to go see this weekend? And they put it in your house. And now nobody knows what the impact of that is going to be. They ended up with perfect timing for COVID. We all should have bought stock in Netflix right when we saw this thing growing. And what's incredible is just that, you see that and you get that and you wonder, when we all go back into the world, will we crave the movie experience? It's been so long that people flood the theaters again to see content? Or have we broken down the kind of paywall system so that we are only still going to go even more rarely to the movie theaters? If Wonder Woman's going to come out at the same time on your television set, a lot of people aren't going to go to the movies or pay more to go to the movies. That's the other thing. I'm waiting to see what the movie prices are when we come back.
Yeah, I mean, to me, maybe the upside to the consumer is now movie theaters need to get creative, right? So now maybe there's dinners. Now maybe there's right. Theaters are doing.
What they're not doing is making it any less expensive for you to go.
Yeah.
And they're chasing down the same problem that happened with the record company business when they were charging you $20 for a CD, and then out comes Apple iTunes, and you can buy a song for 99 cents, and you don't want to buy the whole album.
Right.
You just want the songs that you like. And that was a model that changed music forever. And all of a sudden, look, the byproduct, which has been great, is all these bands started touring again because they own all their touring money, and they don't own the money. They split the money with the record label. And then you end up with these Live Nation deals where they go, well, geez, we got to own some of their touring money, and we should use their songs and commercials and stuff. And so they buy these catalogs, and that's how people are surviving now. So it's very, very interesting. The truth is that the content is still the same. I'm not framing close-ups tighter because you're on a television set instead of a 40-foot movie screen, but I'm sure some directors are. I'm sure some directors are directing. Look, it breaks my heart to think people watch on this thing. That is just, that's a heartbreaker, especially for someone in comedy. And I think I told you this story, not to interrupt, but for Eurovision, we test movies. We go into a movie theater. Even Netflix still does this, and you see how what the audience laughs at, what they don't laugh at, and then you take things out that don't work, and you put things back in, and anything that was confusing, you work on. And when we were testing Eurovision, I was sitting next to my editor, and sometimes in a very funny scene, people will be laughing, and they miss the next joke of dialogue that comes out. And so what you do is you add a couple reaction shots. It's called spacing it out. You space out that next joke, so the laughter will be decelerating as they hear that next thing, and then you catch them again for the next laugh. And that's something that's very familiar and common to making movies in theaters. And I remember that was happening during a scene. I leaned over to my editor. I said, let's open this up a little bit. He goes, oh, it's going to be 6 people on a couch. They'll hear it. And that was like shocking to me and heartbreaking, because there's nothing like being in the theater and everybody laughs together. That's the communal experience of sitting around the campfire and hearing jokes, Yeah. And that has changed.
So let me ask, I know we have some questions,
Sure.
and I just want to ask you, as we're queuing up some questions here, let me ask you, go to the heart of your creative process. Like when you're like deep in it, what's that experience all about for you? I'm not sure the writing experience that you would go to, or you're on the set.
Right. You're always trying to improve upon whatever that look, I don't know where the initial idea comes from or the instinct of it, the way most people don't know where a song comes from, or, you know, but I can tell you that as a creative experience, as far as managing a creative experience, you need to set aside time and space. You need to show up every day. You need to work on what you're creating, and then you need people to give you feedback, and you hopefully will be able to adjust. And management, I think, requires a certain amount of failure. I mean, I don't know how you manage a business any different than you manage a creative process, in the sense that you need to find out what doesn't work. Even though you have an idea of what works, you're never 100% right. You know, you're never 100% there. So you try to put it, as an artist, I try to put it through me. As an example, Eurovision came to me as an 89-page script.
Huh.
It was very funny. A normal script is 120 pages, but this was missing a huge part of the story. But I loved it. I thought it was funny. I thought Will had a very unique idea. I thought the idea of Iceland was funny, and I didn't even know what Eurovision was. Mm-hmm. But once I took that movie on, in it was the seed of a story that I wanted to tell, which was about someone who's so driven for their career that they're missing the love story right next to them and the person that's supporting them, and realizing that they have a very important voice too, if not a more significant voice, which is something I went through with my wife. You know, my career was very much my focus. We got married right after Wedding Crashers. I was swept into a world of kind of opportunities and pressure and tension and expectations. And I kind of lost the relationship for a couple of years, and then finally had to kind of rediscover it and mend it and bring it back. And I thought this is like a beautiful way for me to tell that story from my life. In Wedding Crashers, by the way, you are part of the Wedding Crashers story. It was, for me, about what happens when you and your buddies from high school are really close, and then someone gets a girlfriend, and all of a sudden you're like, but now we're not hanging, and how do we, wait, what's happening to us? You know, when someone falls in love and then the girl's there all the time, and you're like, well, we used to hang out and go, you're not my wingman. That story of how friendships have to grow, immature friendships have to grow into mature friendships, is what's in the middle of Wedding Crashers, and it is what makes the movie special.
Some still immature, by the way.
Never. But I think that making it, you know, you have to use yourself. I think your ideas, I really do believe in that kind of, it's a version of the Warren Buffett thing of like, invest in what you use and what's right around you. You know, you use Colgate every day, invest in Colgate. Yeah. You know, you use a certain car, you know, for some reason you had your first set of headphones with Sony, and you find out for the rest of your life you're buying Sony headphones. Like, you need to use yourself and your experience. You are the thing that is unique in the equation. You know, you're the thing that's going to have the information and the wisdom to understand how to adjust. And as long as you can look at the rest of your teammates and understand they're going through that experience as well, and somehow you all have to work together, then you will have, you know, hopefully a great experience. And, you know, that's how I like to manage. You know, I don't hire people to do just my thing. I want them to do stuff that I'm not as good at. You know, I used to be a cinematographer. I used to edit all my own music videos. I have a very strong opinion when it comes to that stuff. But I love hiring people that just think differently and will bring something that I can't bring to the project, and then honor that and nurture them, because that's what I would want.
I love that. So, all right, do you have time for a couple of questions?
Sure. Yes, do it.
All right. Jorge, welcome. Jorge, you're muted.
Jorge's muted.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, Jorge.
Yeah, gracias. Thank you. It's very interesting, the conference, David. It's very good for us, for all us.
Thank you.
Yeah, do you have a question?
No, I'm on only
Hello.
George, you muted. Okay, well, let's come back to that. I see another question on chat here. A friend of mine who went on in movie industry in Nepal as a producer writer gave me small exposure to what happens in Nepal's context on a movie set. When I saw the mis and under management of resources, I thought they needed to be project managed, but the idea remained in the back burner. David, do you think in the midst of a project manager's role evolving in today's panel discussion, et cetera, that the project manager has a place to help you, help the movie industry? Is that sort of a role part of that?
Yeah, look, that's really what as a producer, the project management is huge. As a director, you're dealing with it creatively, and you also have to deal with it if you're smart on all levels, because, I always try to say everything you say yes to, you're saying no to something else. Make sure every decision that you make of where you're going to use your resources. A movie has a certain budget, which means you have a certain amount of time, you have a certain amount of resources that you need to allocate towards what you're doing. And if you spread your resources too thin, like anything else, you're going to really not get to your goal. So you need to have people around you that help you focus that. When I'm producing for other directors, I'm trying to always do that and help manage and keep things moving, both for the movie studio and the finances they've given us, and for the creative of what the director needs to deliver in order for this to be a successful piece of content later on. I'm in the middle of doing that right now at Paramount Pictures. I'm producing a movie, an animated movie, and it's it's a 4-year process, and we've moved people in and out, different writers, different things. Oh, the movie came out, seems to be very emotional, but it's not funny. So now we bring in comedy people to help punch it up and adjust that. So I think the producing role is a 100% a management role on how you allocate resources. And by the way, the biggest mistake that I do see on Hollywood movie sets is a waste of money, a waste of resources. And you're absolutely correct. So the movie industry in Nepal is no different than Hollywood. It is, it is one of the most wasteful industries I've ever witnessed. And it's true. And you're trying not to do that. And that's what is really, really important. It's a very high stakes game. If people invest in Hollywood, you're forced to sign a written thing that understands it's a high risk situation. You may never see your money back. And at the same time, management is kind of comes down to everything. Creativity has to be managed. I think Susan was talking a little bit about that too. And then production has to be managed, and the studio needs to be managed. Their expectations when they're going to see it, what's going to happen. And the movie I'm on right now has had its own fair share of struggles. And it's about hermit crabs. It's a musical about hermit crabs on the New Jersey shore. So it's a very strange, very funny movie. Yeah. But at different points in time, as a producer, you see opportunities, and then you have to make a question as to whether or not you tell the studio, I want these resources to go into this. Right now, we're talking to a huge music producer who just out of nowhere would be a dream for the project. He's from New Jersey. He thinks the idea is great. Our music is already written and really good. And he heard it and said, I want to take it to the next level. And we all look at each other and go, is it right for the project? We're happy with what we have. What if he ruins it? Yeah. But if he nails it, this thing is he brings Springsteen, Bon Jovi, all these people to the picture because he's so big.
New Jersey to the picture, yeah.
What? And all of a sudden, you're like, wait a minute, what's the opportunity? Can I take this movie and now go back to the studio and say, I want you to invest in this guy. I want you to invest more money in the movie. I want you have a bigger win here than you think you had. You double down. And so you try to create those experiences. If I had gotten The Rock to be the lead voice, there would be more money there for us. Our lead voice is Michael Cera, so that keeps it smaller. And, things move like that. But the management of the process is a huge, huge the producers that are great, of which I'm not a great producer, but the people that I've worked with or seen that are really, really talented at that are incredible project managers.
Sure. Would you consider yourself a project manager?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I love the people who work under me or with me. I never say under me, but the creatives that I assemble as a team, I need them to be as good at that as I am, I made a movie called The Judge, and there was an incredible cinematographer that we had the opportunity of bringing on named Janusz Kaminski, who has won several Oscars and been nominated for many, and basically has shot every Steven Spielberg movie for the last 20 years. And Janusz came on. It's very hard to get him, but you knew when Janusz came on, you're not just getting Janusz. In order for him to do his work, you need to bring in his lighting people, his lights, everything gets bigger. So all of a sudden, that decision of Janusz, where are we going to pull that money away from? They're only giving us this sandbox. So you got to pull it out of the sets, the construction, you got to pull it out of other departments and find ways to balance and management. I put my own fee back in, and so did Robert Downey Jr. put some of his money in order to get Janusz into the film. But those were decisions that we gambled on because as managers, we knew that the look of this movie, we felt this guy really had the handle on that. And that extended onto the composer as well. Yeah. Thomas Newman, who is an amazing composer, but was not the guy that you use for a $35 million movie. He does big movies. But those are the decisions that you make. So I think that is product management. Yeah. He's kind of nonstop in my business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, David,
thank you. Other questions?
Thank you. Any other questions? Might
be abstract for what you guys are doing, but I think it does relate as I was watching all these people, which are really, I love what I heard and learned, Tim.
Yeah.
Today.
Oh, terrific. Thank you. Rebecca, did you have a question?
No.
Okay. I saw your hand up. Well, thank you. I know your time is limited, David, and
yeah.
Boy, this is a real treat. So, I think that to me, just speaking to everyone on this, one of the takeaways here, I think there's a lot of similarities between what we've heard from Michael earlier, from Susan, from the panel, about this concept of product development, about this idea of mixing creativity and critical thought, bringing business models together. We have never been in a time where creativity and business so interact, right? And I know you sort of said that concept the other way, right? That art, art and commerce, it can be very ugly. But at the same time, when you think about startups, all of this information that's out there and how easy it is to create something brilliant and new, what a great time we live in.
Look, I always loved also when I was in marketing, I loved the way you could connect with people about ideas. And, when I was first getting into commercials was when the Just Do It campaign from Nike happened. And it was an incredible thing because it was a motivational, inspirational, energetic concept. They took a visual image of that swoosh. They had the speak that, they had the line, and you were selling aspiration.
Yeah.
You're selling, and it wasn't, and it was encouraging. You know what I mean? And the way the way that I understood how that could happen, and that's creativity and commerce in its best form to me. Like how amazing.
Tim, can I ask a question?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Go ahead.
This is Mladen Vukomanovic. Sorry, I had to switch to my cell phone, David. I mean, in the intro, I said I watched, Wedding Crashers 5 times, and I really love what, Will Ferrell has been doing. So thank you on that, of being a part of the puzzle. What I'm really, usually when speaking or consulting, usually I often give this allegory of entertainment industry and executive producers managing the project. And basically, this is maybe the only industry where you can get an Oscar, right, for managing a project. I guess.
That is absolutely right. The biggest, actually, the biggest award, Best Picture, is to the manager, the product manager. That's what a producer is. So you're executive producer. You're right.
Yeah, and you know, you can get an Oscar, and I'm a civil engineer, and I can get one. So you know, I'm really jealous. But my question is, you know, how do you leverage?
Neither of us are getting an Oscar, by the way, so don't worry about it.
Yeah. Well, you still
get that. Yeah.
You still have time, you know.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah. How do you leverage in between, you know, business objectives for Paramount or any other big studio who just sees a business opportunity, and art?
Well, you know, they have an idea of what they want to sell. It's a very interesting thing. They have what they want to sell, and you have what you want to create. And somewhere in there, you need to manage their expectations and their desires, or lead them to it. You know, I was on a movie. I had written and was going to direct a movie about King Arthur in 2011, 10 years ago. And there was a huge bidding war. The script I wrote was very good. And by the way, and it may not have even mattered if the script was very good. Everybody realized this was a really good time to do it. It was the first season of Game of Thrones. It hadn't completely exploded, but people were starting to understand, oh, wait a minute, maybe there's a market here. So the script sold very well. It went to Warner Brothers, where I had a producing deal for a number of years. And what was interesting is when the budget came in, it was at 130 million. Now, they were supposed to have to green light the movie. They were forced into a situation where if the budget had been 115, they would have to make the movie. The excitement and the heat on the film felt like they were going to make the movie no matter what. And my producer at that time, who Chuck Robin, huge producer, produced Wonder Woman, produced the Batman Begins with Dark Knight and all that. He felt like we could get it through and it was going to be a better movie if we had the extra 15 million. And indeed, I agreed with him. It was going to be a better movie. And we stood by that move, and we tried to manage the studio into going for 130 million. We got greenlit. I moved to Hungary and London. I scouted the whole thing. And then at the last second, they got nervous because my two lead actors, one which was Kit Harington playing King Arthur, who later became a big star off of Game of Thrones, and Joel Kinnaman, the international marketing people got very nervous, and they pulled the plug and said, we need the movie at 115, like you promised. We cut the money. It took us a couple months to get the budget down to make it real. And by the time we were ready to make it, they had lost their stomach, and the movie did not get made, and it shut down. I went on to make The Judge. They went on to make a different version of King Arthur later. But that is an example of poor project management. Whereas, like, the truth is, we could have made the movie, and we could have gone in at 115 and slowly blown up the movie as we needed money and gotten to the 130. But we took a gamble. We thought we were in a strong place, and we lost the film because of it. And that's the kind of product management that a producer needs to be able to really guide. And, you know, how you put these movies together, they're very, very fragile, you know, even up to the point where until you're shooting, you don't know whether the movie's going to happen or not. But I think that's a real talent, and it's really, really hard. And there's a lot of people you're trying to satisfy, and it can go wrong very, very quickly.
Okay, cool. I have tons of questions, of course, but the time is running out. So Tim, back to you. Thank you, David.
Okay, thank you.
David, thank you.
You're welcome, man. Thank you so much. What an honor to be a part of this.
Thank you. The honor is ours. Thank you. You've really brought so much to this group, and I appreciate it. And it's great to see you face. And
I hope it helped.
Yeah, and I'll see you soon. Okay.
Got it. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks. Wow, amazing. What a day we are having. So it's time now, my friends, to wrap it up. Yeah, so we are now, let me just share my screen here as we bring on our most amazing, our final speaker, Dr. Joel Carboni, a friend, a colleague. Joel, as many of you know, is president of IPMA USA. IPMA USA is one of the co-organizers of this session. Dr. Carboni is a leading authority in sustainable project management. He's a graduate of Ball State University, holds a PhD in sustainable development and environment. He has more than 24 years experience in portfolio program project management, spanning government, finance, Big Five consulting, manufacturing, and education. He's a speaker. He is not only president of IPMA USA, but the founder of Green Project Management. Joel is a man on a mission to save the planet. Yes, you are. And you're doing it in ways that many of us are not. It's really impressive to see. Joel is the GPM representative to the United Nations Global Compact, where he is a founding signatory on the UN's Business for Peace Initiative and Anti-Corruption Call to Action. He is a contributing author of the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and is one of the 14 listed supporting organizers of the UN Principles for Responsible Management Education Program. Joel, welcome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tim. And with all that, I'm only 30 years old. It's amazing.
Terrific. Well, we're here talking about innovation. We're here talking about and I know that you are up to an awful lot. You know, you've got a lot of your company is innovating. You are out there, you know, kind of. So I'm curious, you know, as we're heading into the last bit here of this conference, tell us what you're doing.
Well, before I do that, let me just say following David Dobkin is very hard because, wow, that was amazing. And just a little anecdote, the song Volcano Man that opens that movie that he just did, Eurovision, I played it for my son and it's become his personal anthem. So I hear Volcano Man now all the time. So thanks, David Dobkin, for that. Anyway, so yeah, you know, it's interesting. This stream has been amazing in that there's been lots of questions raised, right? Like, what is the need for project managers? You know, to me, and to answer your question, we got to evolve and we have to be able to meet the needs of the present and put a thumb on what's going on to solve the problems of the future. And, you know, right now in Texas, for example, it's frozen over. The first time it's ever snowed there like this in recorded history. And people are dying because it's cold. Yeah. And these types of things shouldn't be happening, but they are. And tipping points, these are tipping points that can fundamentally disrupt the planet and produce abrupt change in the climate. And we're seeing it right now. If one of these were to happen somewhere else, for example, a mass methane release, right? That could put us on an irreversible path that we could never come back from. And these are the types of things that are happening. And it requires innovation and it requires change agents. So do we need project managers? Yes, no, we need change agents. That's always going to be a yes. And project managers are in fact change agents. So what we're up to is trying to be disruptive and innovative and using project management as a way to drive that global change. And I want to share a little anecdote. I know we're only got 10 minutes here to close this out, but if you look at the global emissions, right? So what's causing this massive problem of climate change? It's the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. And the question is, where is it coming from? Now, some people say cow farts. Okay, fine. But in reality, in industry, you're looking at a lot of it is from development. And these are things that project managers control, specifically resources of steel and cement. Yeah. These are the two basic building blocks that almost every project consumes, right? And so we have to figure out a way to go about this in a whole new way. And so what we've done is a buddy of mine who is in the steel industry came to me a few years ago and he said, hey, I want to build a steel mill. And I'm like, not interested. boring. I said, but if you want to do it in a way that disrupts the steel industry, I'm all about it. And he said, okay, what do you want to do? So over the past 3 years, we've developed a design for a self-sustaining steel mill that doesn't impact the environment at all. So for example, primary steel, which is used, you take iron ore, Australia is almost our main export. Iron ore is extracted, it's blasted, broken down, and create steel. We're going to take all scrap. So there's no more need for mining whatsoever. All the waste streams will then be converted into a product that can become cement, trapping that carbon in the cement and not releasing it. And so there are ways to do business to where you're completely innovative. And what would happen is, if you eradicate that 6% of steel production from the atmosphere, you can almost solve the crisis of reducing that 2 degrees Celsius, which is the mitigating factor for climate change, in just one industry. And that's where project managers have to look at these initiatives and go, okay, the risks, the benefits, the objectives, the stakeholder, what's this, what can we do to shift this tide a bit to also look at impacts on the environment and society? And that's where we can then sell that back to the project owner, and they go, yeah, we get it. And that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. So, I mean, how do you see the need for innovation in sustainability kind of globally? Like, there's a lot, right? There's the river cleanup boats. There's the Pacific trash patch that's getting worked through. There's carbon. There's the Paris Accord. What do you see as kind of the need for innovation?
Need for innovation is that sustainability is the wrong approach. And I know to hear me say that, you're probably going, wait, what? Yeah. But it's true. Because the question is, what is it that we're sustaining?
Yeah.
We're sustaining the way things are today, which is not sustainable. If we'd gone back 40 years, then that would be appropriate. Right now, we have to focus on regeneration. So what is the root cause of why we need the SDGs? We've got 17 goals, which are great, but why do we need them in the first place? What caused them to be manifested? Why is the garbage patch even there? We have to take a look at our impacts and our co-design with nature and say, what can we learn from our ancestors? Speaking specifically of the indigenous, how did they manage our earthly resources? And how can we learn from them and adopt those into our management principles and practices to be able to drive things into the future? Because if we can't do that, it's game over. We always talk about save the planet. Well, the planet's gonna be fine. The question is, will we?
Save the humans.
Exactly.
Yeah. And there's a lot, right? And it's interesting that there's this huge battle between kind of traditional energy, loyalists, if you will, and people who see the potential of jobs, of economy, of well-being that sustainability brings.
Absolutely. We have to be able to share the victories and to share the benefits on a wider scale than, you've got the people who are all about the renewables in and of themselves, but the people who drive it are the people with money. And so you have to be able to speak to how, one, it's profitable, it's beneficial, and it creates jobs. And so if you're able to drive innovation towards those 3 things, then you're going to get the ears of everybody, whether you're left, right, or center. This is on a global scale. For example, right now in Texas, there's people going on to these right-wing news channels saying, oh, well, this Green New Deal or this move towards sustainability, it's a failure because look, a few wind turbines froze. Well, that's not really true. 80% of the green infrastructure overperformed while the fossil fuels all collapsed. And so there's actually a benefit to going this direction. But the trick is, how do you convince someone that this is the right way to do it when they're just looking at dollars and cents? And we have to see it as an investment in our future and our children's future, grandchildren's future.
Do you see the need for disruption? Like, does all innovation in this space have to be disruptive?
Absolutely. Yeah, it has to be, because we are out of time. This weather event in Texas is a result of climate change. And even COVID, as we continue to encroach on habitats by, knocking down forests and dozing off natural areas, these animals have nowhere to go. And so they're currently invading, human habitats, because and they're bringing everything with them. My wife, for example, her house in Malaysia, there's a mountain nearby, and they just basically dozed it for development. And all these monkeys came down off the mountain, and they're invading the neighborhoods and wreaking havoc. Where are they supposed to go? So we have to be able to innovate our relationship with the natural world, and yet still be able to turn a profit, because that's what people are looking for.
Yeah. Wow. So let me shift gears just as we wrap up here, the last couple of minutes. IPMA USA. What's going on at IPMA USA?
Yeah, we're having a lot of fun. We're getting younger, and we're looking to do some disruptive things here ourselves. We're actually going to be having a conference in April, and our speakers are going to be talking about some things that might be kicking us off social media. How to deal with assholes, for example. That's one topic that we're discussing about. So we're looking to have a little bit more fun this year, because 2020 was horrible. We couldn't do anything, couldn't have any fun. So we decided that we're going to have a very unconference in April, talking about very topics that might get people's eyebrows raised a little bit. So we're having a lot of fun.
Great. Well, if you are interested, for all those who are watching here, IPMA-USA.org. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Terrific. Well, Joel, thank you very, very much. Let me just maybe perhaps share some concluding remarks here for everybody as we approach the tippy top of the hour here. So a quote from Susan, who graced us with her presence today: disruptive thinking is no longer an optional skill, but how you manage it is. As Joel, as you just said, our role is changing. The role of the traditional project manager, we need to keep being more adaptive. We need to keep looking at how we can meet the challenges of the day. It's utterly imperative that we do that, or we risk becoming not the project leaders, but the project administrators, right? That's right. Always my fear, is that we get relegated downward and downward in the pecking order. So we have to be on the forefront. The other thought for everybody here is from Alex, and this is in relation to the 32nd. This is 32nd IPMA World Congress, the impact of the digital economy. My goodness, pardon me, on the project leadership and projects themselves is rather remarkable nowadays, and most probably will grow even more. The digital economy is upon us, and so our digital literacy is critical. We have to keep understanding data science. We have to keep understanding AI. We have to keep rising to those challenges and understanding how they integrate into new construction and new business transformation, new business models, these kinds of things. So that being said, I hope that you all have been able to take away some things. Please, let me know what you have discovered on this journey. We'd love to hear from you. I want to say thank you to the member associations, including IPMA USA, first and foremost, to IPMA Global, to Mexico, to Croatia, to Latvia, to Lithuania, to the Czech Republic, to all sorts of other, to Nepal. Who else am I forgetting? To GPM and Germany. Thank you all. Thank you to Mladen and Rebecca and Magda for doing our marketing. To our speakers and panelists, thank you. I am so grateful. You all have provided so much to this conference, and it really would not have been much of anything without you all. So thank you for your expertise. And finally, to each and every one of you who attended today, took the time out of your life to watch this. I hope it was a good use of your time. I thank you. Please go visit sig.ipma.world for more information. And again, we are so appreciative. So let me share with you, and we're going to email these out very quickly. Please go to ipma2021.world, and the promotion code is innovation10. to get a discount, 10% discount for the 32nd IPMA World Congress. And just go check it out. It's really great. It is going to be an amazing experience. I hope to see you there. Please go for an additional 50% discount for design thinking PDF templates. Go to DT-Toolbook, that's design thinking, DT-Toolbook.com shop, and put in the code IPMA and you will get a discount there. Thank you, Michael Lurick, for that. And finally, Susan from Edge Dweller, Susan Reed, is offering on March 12th from 8 to 11 a masterclass in innovation for project managers, the intersection of method and madness, 8 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 2 to 5 p.m. CET. Please reach out to wolf@edgedweller.net. So again, thank you all so much for your time and have a wonderful rest of your day.